I'm Dr. Jennifer Bird. I'm a biblical scholar, and I happen to care quite a bit about what people do with what they find in the Bible. This is a video in this series of videos talking about, essentially, I think a lot of the things attributed to Jesus in the Gospels make more sense when we read them through a political and economic lens, instead of the way I tended to do it, and many people growing up in the church are taught to do, which is to read it through a spiritual lens, or even turn it into an analogy when it actually makes more sense if you don't turn it into an analogy. So the story we're looking at today comes from Matthew chapter 20, and it's another one of the Vineyard stories. And let me preface this one by saying the way I tended to think about the story and the way I hear students being taught, they had been taught to read the story, is about it doesn't matter what point in your life you accept Jesus, everybody gets the same reward, which is heaven, getting access into heaven. That's kind of the short version. So most people are taught to make this an analogy for knowing God through Christ and faith and getting into heaven. I suggest we take the political and economic lens and look at this not through a spiritualized analogy, but through what it's actually saying and how that applies directly to people's lives. So this story opens, "For the kingdom of heaven is like." So the kingdom of heaven, what is the kingdom of heaven like? It is a place where what? Justice rules and people are able to find enough work to feed their families. So here's a story about it. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, "You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. When he went out again about noon and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock, he went around and found others standing around. And he said to them, "Why are you standing here idle all day?" And they said, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You also go into the vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, "Call the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first." When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now, when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, "These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who've borne the burden of the day in the scorching heat." But he replied to one of them, "Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I gave to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I'm generous?" So the last will be first and the first will be last. I still to this day don't know what to do with that last verse. Kind of annoys me that they tack that on because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But here's the thing, folks. Yeah, if you read this through the lens of it needing to be an analogy, then some people are annoyed that they have been devoted to Christ their whole lives, and someone else who accepts Jesus on their deathbed also gets into heaven, right? That kind of thing. But if you read it as what it's talking about, migrant workers, people, day laborers are dependent upon being chosen for every morning for labor to be able to feed their families. And so if you weren't selected at the first draft, then what are you going to do? What do you do all day? So that there are people still standing around at 9 because nobody has hired them. There's people still standing around at noon because there weren't enough positions to fill. And when he says to them at 5 o'clock, "Why have you been standing here idle all day?" perhaps judging them for being idle, the point is they couldn't find work. This way of reading the story, I had to have shown to me through the lens of day laborers. This is their reality. It isn't that they don't want to work, it's that they can't find it. And so through that lens, and a reminder that heaven is like this, the kingdom of heaven is like this. It is a place where people can find enough work to feed their families. It is a place where people get what they need, what is right. This is what's said here in the story. But the issue from my perspective is reading this story through the lens of actual people's lives. And I wasn't taught to think of it that way. And it makes more sense to me when I read it this way. Do with it what you will. See you next time.